The human body, you see, is not unlike a machine, but it's a very special kind of machine. Most machines wear out with use, but the human machine, when used properly, actually grows stronger with use. Your muscles don't grow when you rest them. They grow when you challenge them. Your mind doesn't sharpen when you coddle it. It sharpens when you push it beyond its comfort zone. And your character, that most precious of all human assets, doesn't develop in moments of ease, but in moments of challenge, in those crucial seconds when everything in you wants to stop, but something deeper, something more powerful, forces you to continue. Let me share with you a fundamental truth about energy that most people never understand. Energy is not something you have. Energy is something you create. It's not a finite resource that gets depleted throughout the day like gasoline in a tank. No, energy is more like a muscle that grows stronger with exercise, more like a fire that burns brighter when you feed it with purpose and action. Think about this for a moment. When was the last time you felt truly energized, albeit it wasn't after a long period of rest and relaxation? I'll bet it was after you accomplished something meaningful, after you pushed through a barrier, after you did something that required you to dig deep and find strength you didn't know you had. That's because energy follows action, not the other way around. Most people have it backwards. They wait to feel energized before they take action. They say, when I feel better, I'll start my exercise program. When I have more energy, I'll begin that project. When I'm not so tired, I'll make those important phone calls. But successful people understand the secret. You don't wait for energy to take action. You take action to create energy. This principle applies to every area of life. In business, the entrepreneurs who succeed are not necessarily the ones who start with the most resources or the most energy. They're the ones who start moving even when they feel tired, even when the odds seem stacked against them, even when common sense tells them to wait for better circumstances. They understand that momentum is everything, and momentum begins with a single step, often taken when that step feels like the hardest thing in the world to take. Consider the difference between successful and unsuccessful people when it comes to handling fatigue. The unsuccessful person feels tired and immediately interprets this as a signal to stop, to rest, to postpone. They honor their fatigue as if it were a sacred command. But the successful person has learned to interpret fatigue differently. They see it not as a stop sign, but as a yield sign, not as a command to quit, but as information to process and overcome. Here's what I've discovered in my years of studying human achievement. Fatigue is often not physical at all. Oh, we think it is. We feel that heaviness in our limbs, that cloudiness in our thinking, that overwhelming desire to just sit down and do nothing. But more often than not, what we're experiencing is not physical exhaustion, but mental and emotional resistance to the challenges before us. The mind, you see, is a peculiar thing. It's designed to protect us, to keep us safe, to conserve our energy for what it perceives as truly important. But the mind's definition of important is often quite different from what will actually serve our long-term success and happiness. The mind wants to avoid discomfort, to take the path of least resistance, to postpone difficult tasks until some mythical future moment when they'll somehow be easier. But here's the truth that will change your life if you really understand it. That mythical future moment never comes. The task that's difficult today will be difficult tomorrow. The phone call you're avoiding will be just as challenging next week. The project you're postponing will require the same energy and effort whether you tackle it now or later. The only difference is that later you'll also have to overcome the additional weight of procrastination, the compound interest of delayed action. So what do we do when we feel tired? We do what all successful people have learned to do. We move anyway. Not because we want to, not because we feel like it, not because we have some special reservoir of energy that others lack, but because we understand that movement creates energy, that action generates momentum, that taking the first step somehow makes the second step easier. This is not about becoming a workaholic or ignoring legitimate physical needs. Your body does need rest, proper nutrition, adequate sleep. But what I'm talking about is different. I'm talking about those moments when you know you should act, when there's something important that needs to be done, but you feel tired not because your body is truly exhausted, but because your mind is resisting the effort required. Let me tell you about the compound effect of forcing yourself to move when you feel tired. Every time you push through that resistance, every time you take action despite feeling depleted, you're not just accomplishing the immediate task at hand. You're also building what I call your psychological muscle. You're training yourself to act despite how you feel. You're developing the most valuable skill any human being can possess, the ability to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, regardless of whether you feel like doing it. This skill, this ability to force yourself to move when you feel tired, becomes a habit. And habits, as we know, are the compound interest of life. Small actions taken consistently over time create extraordinary results. The person who forces themselves to exercise when they feel tired doesn't just get the benefit of that one workout. They develop the habit of exercising consistently, which transforms their entire physical condition over time. The entrepreneur who makes those difficult phone calls, even when they feel mentally exhausted, doesn't just complete those calls. They develop the habit of taking necessary action regardless of their emotional state, which transforms their entire business over time. The student who studies even when they feel intellectually drained doesn't just learn that material. They develop the discipline that will serve them throughout their academic and professional career. But here's where it gets really interesting. The more you practice this principle, the less tired you actually feel. It's as if your capacity for energy expands to meet the demands you place upon it. People often ask me, how do you have so much energy at your age? The answer is simple. I have energy because I use energy. I feel energized because I consistently take energizing actions, especially when I don't feel like it. Think of energy like a bank account, but a very special kind of bank account. In a regular bank account, the more you withdraw, the less you have. But in the energy bank account, the more you withdraw through purposeful action, the more your account grows. Every time you force yourself to move when you feel tired, you're making a deposit that will pay dividends later. Now let's talk about the practical application of this principle. How exactly do you force yourself to move when you feel tired? It starts with understanding that feelings are not facts. Just because you feel tired doesn't mean you are too tired to act. Just because you feel like giving up doesn't mean you should give up. Feelings are temporary visitors. They come and go like clouds across the sky. But your actions, your decisions, your choices to move forward despite how you feel, these create permanent changes in your life. The first step is to recognize the feeling of tiredness for what it often is, resistance in disguise. Your mind is trying to protect you from discomfort, but growth only happens outside your comfort zone. When you feel that familiar heaviness, that voice in your head saying maybe later or I'll start tomorrow, that's your cue that you're about to encounter an opportunity for growth. The second step is to start small. You don't have to climb Mount Everest when you feel tired. You just have to take the next step. If you're supposed to exercise but feel exhausted, don't worry about doing a full workout. Just put on your exercise clothes. Just walk to the gym. Just do 5 minutes. You'll be amazed how often that small action creates the momentum for much more. If you have a project that seems overwhelming when you're mentally fatigued, don't think about completing the entire project. Just open the file. Just write one sentence. Just make one phone call. Movement creates energy, and energy creates more movement. It's a beautiful, self-reinforcing cycle, but it has to start with that first small action taken despite how you feel. The third step is to connect your actions to your deeper purpose. When you feel tired, it's easy to lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing. But purpose is the fuel that can drive you forward even when your physical and emotional tanks feel empty. Ask yourself, why does this matter? How will taking this action, even when I don't feel like it, serve my larger goals? What kind of person do I want to become? And what would that person do right now? Sometimes the answer is that the action you're avoiding will directly contribute to your goals. Sometimes it's that the discipline of taking action despite fatigue will strengthen your character. Sometimes it's that the habits you're building will serve you for years to come. But there's always a deeper purpose, always a reason that goes beyond the immediate discomfort of moving when you'd rather rest. Here's something else I want you to understand. Every successful person in history has felt tired. Every great achievement was accomplished by someone who at some point had to push through fatigue, doubt, and the desire to quit. The difference between those who achieve greatness and those who live ordinary lives is not that the achievers never feel tired, it's that they've learned to move in spite of being tired. Thomas Edison felt tired during those long nights in his laboratory, but he forced himself to continue experimenting until he invented the light bulb. Michael Jordan felt tired during those grueling practice sessions, but he forced himself to keep improving until he became the greatest basketball player of all time. Every successful entrepreneur has felt mentally exhausted while building their business, but they forced themselves to make one more call, send one more email, try one more approach. The beautiful thing about this principle is that it works in every area of life. Feeling too tired to exercise. That's exactly when exercise will benefit you most, not just physically but psychologically. Feeling too mentally drained to work on your goals. That's precisely when working on them will build the discipline that separates successful people from everyone else. Feeling too emotionally depleted to invest in your relationships. That's when reaching out to others will not only strengthen your connections, but also energize your spirit. But let's be clear about something important. I'm not advocating for burning yourself out or ignoring your genuine physical and emotional needs. There's a difference between the tired that comes from legitimate exhaustion and the tired that comes from resistance to growth. The first requires rest and recovery. The second requires action and movement. How do you tell the difference? Legitimate exhaustion usually comes after sustained effort, after you've been pushing yourself for an extended period without adequate rest. This kind of tiredness is your body's way of telling you that recovery is necessary for continued high performance. Honor this kind of tiredness with proper rest, nutrition, and sleep. But resistance tiredness is different. It comes not from overexertion, but from underexertion, not from doing too much, but from avoiding what needs to be done. It's the tiredness you feel when you think about starting that difficult project, making that challenging phone call, or having that uncomfortable conversation. This tiredness disappears as soon as you start moving, as soon as you take that first step toward what you know you should be doing. Learning to distinguish between these two types of tiredness is crucial for applying this principle effectively. When you're truly exhausted, rest is the answer. But when you're experiencing resistance tiredness, movement is the cure. Now let me share with you one of the most powerful secrets I've learned about human energy. It's not just about what you do, it's about what you think about what you do. Two people can perform the exact same action, but one feels energized afterward while the other feels drained. The difference lies not in the action itself, but in how they frame that action in their minds. The person who approaches tasks with resentment, who constantly tells themselves how tired they are, how unfair life is, how much they'd rather be doing something else, will feel drained by even simple activities. But the person who approaches the same task with purpose, who focuses on the benefits they'll gain and the person they'll become by taking action, will feel energized by the same activities. This is why your internal dialogue matters so much. Instead of saying, "I'm too tired to do this," try saying, "This is exactly when I need to prove to myself that I can do hard things." Instead of focusing on how you feel right now, focus on how you'll feel after you've taken action. Instead of thinking about the discomfort of the process, think about the satisfaction of the result. Your mind believes what you tell it repeatedly. If you constantly tell yourself you're tired, you'll feel tired. If you constantly tell yourself you're capable of great things even when you don't feel like it, you'll develop that capability. The story you tell yourself about your capacity to act despite fatigue becomes your reality. This brings us to another crucial aspect of this principle, the relationship between physical movement and mental energy. The human body and mind are not separate entities, they're parts of an integrated system. When you move your body, you change your mental state. When you change your posture, you change your attitude. When you increase your physical activity, you increase your mental clarity and emotional resilience. This is why some of the most successful people in the world maintain rigorous exercise routines even when their schedules are packed with other responsibilities. They understand that physical movement is not a luxury or a time-consuming distraction from more important work. It's an essential ingredient for sustained high performance in all areas of life. But you don't have to run marathons or lift heavy weights to access this principle. Simply standing up instead of sitting, walking instead of remaining stationary, moving your body in any way when you feel mentally stuck or emotionally drained can create immediate shifts in your energy and outlook. The body teaches the mind that action is possible, that movement leads to momentum, that you have more capacity than you think. Let's talk about the cumulative effect of consistently applying this principle over time. Each time you force yourself to move when you feel tired, you're not just accomplishing that immediate task, you're also building what psychologists call self-efficacy, your belief in your ability to handle challenges and achieve goals. This belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that transforms every area of your life. People with high self-efficacy don't just feel more confident, they actually perform better because they're willing to take on bigger challenges, persist longer in the face of obstacles, and bounce back more quickly from setbacks. And self-efficacy is built through exactly the kind of experiences we're talking about, successfully doing difficult things even when you don't feel like doing them. Every time you exercise when you'd rather stay in bed, you prove to yourself that you can override immediate desires for long-term benefits. Every time you work on your goals when you feel mentally exhausted, you demonstrate that your commitment is stronger than your comfort. Every time you take care of responsibilities when you'd rather procrastinate, you build evidence that you're the kind of person who follows through regardless of circumstances. This evidence accumulates over time, creating an unshakable foundation of self-trust. You begin to know, not just hope or believe, but truly know that you can handle whatever life throws at you because you've repeatedly proven it to yourself in small ways. This knowledge becomes a source of tremendous strength and energy, creating an upward spiral where confidence leads to action, action leads to results, and results lead to even greater confidence. But here's what's really beautiful about this principle. It doesn't just change how you feel about your own capabilities, it changes how others perceive and respond to you. People are naturally drawn to individuals who demonstrate consistent energy and follow through. They want to work with them, learn from them, and support their endeavors. Your willingness to move when you feel tired becomes a form of leadership that inspires others to raise their own standards. Think about the people in your life who you most admire and respect. I'll bet there are individuals who seem to have an endless capacity for taking action, who don't make excuses based on how they feel, who somehow find the energy to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. These people aren't necessarily more talented or more fortunate than others. They've simply mastered the art of moving despite fatigue. And here's the secret they know that others don't. The more you practice moving when you feel tired, the less often you actually feel tired. Your capacity expands to meet your demands. Your energy increases to match your activity level. Your strength grows to handle the challenges you're willing to face. It's one of the most reliable and wonderful aspects of human nature. We become capable of what we consistently require of ourselves. This principle also applies to mental and emotional challenges, not just physical ones. Feeling too overwhelmed to tackle a complex problem. That's exactly when you need to break it down into smaller pieces and start working on the first piece. Feeling too discouraged to continue pursuing a goal. That's precisely when persistence will build the resilience that leads to breakthrough. Feeling too uncertain to make a decision. That's when making the best decision you can with available information will develop your judgment and decision-making skills. The pattern is always the same. The moment you least want to do something is often the moment when doing it will benefit you most. Not because the task itself is more valuable at that moment, but because overcoming your resistance builds the psychological muscle that makes everything else easier. Now let me address something that many people struggle with, the guilt or pressure they feel when they hear advice like this. They worry that they're supposed to be constantly pushing themselves, never resting, always overriding their feelings in service of productivity. But that's not what this principle is about at all. This is about developing the wisdom to know when your tiredness is calling for rest and when it's calling for action. It's about building the strength to choose your response to fatigue rather than being at its mercy. It's about creating the kind of life where you act from purpose and intention rather than just reacting to whatever you happen to feel in any given moment. There will absolutely be times when the right choice is to rest, to recharge, to take care of your physical and emotional needs. The goal is not to become a machine that never stops, it's to become a human being who has the freedom to choose their actions based on what will serve their highest good, not just what feels easiest in the moment. This freedom of choice is what separates truly successful and fulfilled people from those who feel like victims of their own emotions and circumstances. When you can move despite feeling tired, you're no longer at the mercy of your moods. When you can take action regardless of whether you feel like it, you're no longer limited by the ups and downs of daily emotions. You become the author of your own life rather than just a character in a story written by your feelings. And here's perhaps the most important point of all. This principle is available to everyone, regardless of their starting point, their circumstances, or their past history. You don't need special talent, exceptional resources, or perfect conditions to begin applying it. You just need to make a decision that the next time you feel tired but know there's something important to be done, you'll do it anyway. Start small if you need to. If you feel too tired to exercise for an hour, exercise for 10 minutes. If you feel too mentally drained to work on your big project for 3 hours, work on it for 15 minutes. If you feel too emotionally depleted to make 10 phone calls, make 1 phone call. The size of the action matters less than the act of the action despite how you feel. Each small victory builds momentum for larger victories. Each time you prove to yourself that you can move when tired, you make it easier to move when tired in the future. Each demonstration of your ability to act despite resistance strengthens your belief in your capacity to handle whatever challenges life presents. Remember, the goal is not perfection but progress. You won't always succeed in overriding your fatigue and resistance. There will be days when you give in to the desire to postpone, procrastinate, or quit. That's part of being human. The key is to get back to applying the principle as soon as possible without wasting energy on guilt or self-criticism. Think of it like learning to ride a bicycle. You don't expect to maintain perfect balance from the very first attempt. You wobble, you fall, you get back up, and you try again. Eventually, maintaining balance becomes automatic. The same thing happens with the ability to move when you feel tired. At first, it requires conscious effort and deliberate decision making. But over time, it becomes a natural part of who you are. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen, and when it does, you'll find that what once seemed like impossible challenges become manageable obstacles. What once felt like overwhelming fatigue becomes minor resistance that you can easily push through. What once seemed like insurmountable barriers become stepping stones to higher levels of achievement and fulfillment. The energy you create by consistently moving when you feel tired doesn't just help you accomplish more tasks. It fundamentally changes your relationship with life itself. Instead of feeling like life is something that happens to you, you begin to experience life as something you actively create. Instead of being a passive recipient of whatever energy or motivation happens to show up, you become an active generator of the energy and momentum needed to build the life you want. This shift in perspective is perhaps the greatest gift of all. When you know you can create energy through action, when you trust your ability to move forward regardless of how you feel, when you've proven to yourself repeatedly that you can do difficult things, even when you don't want to, you approach every challenge with a different level of confidence and capability. So I challenge you today to begin applying this principle immediately. Don't wait until you feel more energetic or more motivated. Don't postpone until circumstances are more favorable or your schedule is less demanding. The perfect time to start forcing yourself to move when you feel tired is right now, in whatever situation you currently find yourself. Look around your life and identify one area where you've been letting fatigue or resistance hold you back. Maybe it's your health and fitness where you've been postponing exercise because you feel too tired after work. Maybe it's your career where you've been avoiding difficult conversations or challenging projects because they feel overwhelming. Maybe it's your relationships where you've been putting off meaningful connections because social interaction feels exhausting. Whatever that area is, commit to taking one small action today, right now, despite how you feel. Don't worry about doing everything perfectly or completely transforming your life overnight. Just prove to yourself that you can move when you feel tired, that you can act despite resistance, that you have more strength and capability than your current feelings suggest. The moment you take that first step, something magical happens. You begin to remember who you really are, not a victim of your emotions or circumstances, but a powerful creator capable of shaping your own destiny through the choices you make and the actions you take. You reconnect with the part of yourself that knows that energy follows action, that momentum builds movement, and that the greatest achievements come not from feeling great, but from doing great things even when you don't feel like it. This is the path to a life of genuine fulfillment and success, a life where you're not constantly at the mercy of how you happen to feel on any given day, but where you're actively creating the energy, the results, and the experiences that align with your deepest values and highest aspirations. And it all begins with the simple but profound decision to force yourself to move when you feel tired. The power is in your hands. The choice is before you. The time is now. What will you do with this moment, with this opportunity, with this chance to prove to yourself that you're capable of more than you've been settling for? The answer to that question will determine not just what you accomplish today, but who you become tomorrow and every day thereafter. So move, act, begin. Not because you feel like it, but because you know it's right. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Not because you have energy, but because you're about to create it. Your future self is counting on the decision you make right now. Don't let them down.